There's one sound that no one knows. What does the fox say?
All you, Brian.
Okay, so what I need from you, Chad, is the list of everything I have to cover for the introduction to do this properly.
Yeah. Okay,
hold on, let me write it down. I'm a list taker. Okay, go.
Okay, so we need the name of the podcast.
Name, okay.
Okay, its purpose.
Purpose.
Who we are.
Who, okay.
And then why this is cool, I guess. Energetic, something energetic. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah.
And then
discount.
Discount, okay.
Name of the book.
Book, okay, got it.
That's probably good.
I'm really enjoying watching the screen bounce back and forth between the two of you. It's not like a strobe effect at all.
No, don't worry about it.
And then the other people. Yeah.
Drink more.
Piece of cake.
Because that'll obviously help it, right? That won't give me a clear sense of vertigo or anything. No, that's good.
Cheers.
Okay.
Go for it, Brian. All yours.
So this is how you do an introduction to the 2-month review. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2-month review. My name is Brian Wood, and I am the brainchild behind all of this. Anything that's good and anything that's happening is probably because I came along and helped. So welcome. The purpose is to take some of the awful book choices Chad makes and try to make them more interesting. And so what we're going to do that is bring on special guests. And today we have a fantastic guest. We have, state your name again. No, we have Tom Flynn. He's a fantastic bookseller in the Chicago area. So he'll give us kind of like the brass tacks of how you can put the book Fox in someone's hand. Oh, speaking of book, you can get a discount. Go to 2% or whatever the website's called. There's a link somewhere down there. And you'll get 20% off. Or, if you use promo code Brian, you'll get 22% off. So, yeah, try that. None of that is true, by the way. So you're going to have to look in the description of this stuff. And I think that just about does it. So we're going to be talking about Fox, a book by Dubravka. So yeah, let's tear right into that then.
Let's not. Let's start with our weekly Croatia update. So Croatia played Nigeria in the World Cup,
yes.
And they won 2-0.
And they sent a dude home. I just read.
That's amazing.
Wait, I didn't read this. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So a striker that tried to sub in the 85th minute refused to take the field after warming up, citing like a back injury. And apparently he was kind of tweaked that he wasn't in the starting 11. So the coach sent him home. And they can't even replace him. They just have to operate like with one fewer person on their bench now. So the coach is like, I have to be able to, et cetera, et cetera. So dude got sent home. Like he plays for get sent home from the World Cup because he refused to enter a game.
That's awesome. Well, just to finish up by 2-0. So Croatia won on an own goal from Oginkaro Etibo, and Luka Modric scored a penalty, which was one of the many penalties in this first week of World Cup. But Croatia's 1-0. They're top of their group, 3 points. Go Chad, Croatia.
I feel like I handed it off to you with a lot of energy. You just tanked it right into the ground. My goodness.
Just blow it. I do have information about this, though. So this book in Croatia won an award tonight. Actually,
really?
Literally earlier this afternoon, because of the time difference, it would be, their night, our day. And it is the T Portal Award, which Dubravka won for the first time in some time, but for Fox itself. It's a Croatian national award. So congratulations to her, and congratulations to the book.
Yeah. Hey, I've got a cool tie-in I think both of you might like quite a bit, and especially anybody that's like into book culture and that sort of stuff. So I was having dinner with a Croatian couple on Saturday, actually, randomly enough. I was sitting at a table with two people that are from, well, one was from Croatia, one was from the Czech Republic. It's like, oh, I'm reading a book right now from a Croatian author. And they're like, who? And I'm like, well, I'm going to mispronounce it. And they're like, oh, nobody pronounces it. Don't worry. So I'm like, yeah, Dubravka. And they're like, oh, Dubravka Aggression. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And I started talking about how it was Bloomsday and we got to be drinking whiskey. And they're like, what's Bloomsday? And I, told them about Joyce and everything. And they're like, oh, in my hometown, I think it's Pola was the name of it. They have a statue of James Joyce outside of a bar in Croatia, and it's this little town on a peninsula. And apparently Joyce would like always go there on vacation, or I forget what, but like he hung out in Croatia all the time. And there's a statue of James Joyce in this little town, this port town called I think it's Pola in Croatia.
Dude, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and then she mentions James Joyce in the first chapters. That's a really cool tie-in with Bloomsday and all that stuff.
That's perfect.
Yeah, it was really cool.
And
Did you have any Bloomsday celebrations?
Notes. That's how you pull it all together. You do an introduction. You like personal story that relates to the book.
Boom, and then we're in.
And yeah, then we're right deep down into Fox.
Why don't you just go behind you and kip out some pull-ups and let Tom and I handle this, okay? I don't think we really need you here, Chad, to be honest. Just wasted bandwidth at this point.
Just go do some kip. That is such a bad in joke. Like no one's catching that reference, but I think something just fell down our back stairs, like maybe a human. Anyway, so Tom, how are you doing in Chicago?
Good. It's brutally hot here. It's finally like starting to cool off. We got some storms coming through, but it was like 95, and then humidity was like 80%, so it felt over 100 degrees today. So nice and pleasant.
Oh,
not too punishing or anything. My children weren't melting all day long, but it's fun.
That seems perfectly fun. I heard that you were upset about part of our podcast last week.
Yeah. So,
Ooh, this is fun.
Really appreciated the whole like, Chad. I really appreciate you going to all the trouble to track down that story, and really loved me to, like, pausing the podcast to text you to send me the story, and then hitting play again and hearing both of you chuckle over not sending it to any of the guests, just so you guys had a leg up and could proceed to fuck with us as much as humanly possible. And that was sweet. I think my follow-up text got that across. And then what else? All right, yeah, Brian's idea of gaming the Amazon reviews wasn't remotely a kick in the teeth or anything. Like that was totally totally above the belt.
The whole thing was to make fun of Amazon. We're not celebrating Amazon.
I heard from someone that if we get enough fake reviews on there, they'll like block all of them.
Mm.
So you would win then. So what you would want? What you want, Tom? It's too many fake reviews.
That gives me like 2 o'clock in the morning for like almost every book.
Well, Tom,
so we do have
to write like a script, like create a bot that just like floods Amazon with fake reviews.
Its name is like John Locke. The self-published author John Locke. So we do have one review, a 5-star review that just went up on Amazon for Fox. And here's the review. I'll just read it to you. I'll just read you the first paragraph. Or the first sentence, really. This book was discovered while listening to the publisher's baseball podcast when they break from providing novice fan analysis.
There you go. Sounds fair.
Seems about right. Yeah.
No, to be fair, Tom, true. I didn't read the short story Chad sent out, so I'm coming in just from only reading the book. So okay. I talked a big game and then came up short. Story of my life in every aspect.
I meant to do more research, but I didn't have time today. But I do want to say I did. Tom, did you read the story? What we're talking about for anyone who's listening?
You sent me to me this afternoon, like right before I had an appointment, so I didn't get a chance to check it out. It was actually like almost taunting in a way. Like, here it is. Pretty sure you're at work, and like we're going to talk about this in 5 hours. But if you find the time, like,
I didn't entirely do that on purpose. Just like 95% on purpose.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure what the percentage is there, Chad. I'm pretty confident. I know that.
So anyone who's listening to this, we're going to be talking about part 1 of Fox called A Story About How Stories Come to Be Written. And this is based on Boris Pilnjak's story, How Stories Come to Be Written, which I hunted down last week and made like a PDF of and shared with a handful of people did email for it and may have gotten it. But what I was going to say is I did read the story before rereading this chapter. And in my mind, from reading this before, she did explain like more or less what the chapter or what the story was, but that there was maybe some parts I wasn't entirely sure of. The whole story is basically included here. Like there's not a lot that you're missing. Like it does go through, there's some added paragraphs, there's a little bit more of a context, but it's not that different. Like if you didn't read it, you're not missing anything. You really want to read Fox and not this story because Fox is more interesting. But the thing that I thought you would hone in on, Brian, is the incredibly racist beginning to this story.
Why am I honing in on that?
Because I don't know. I thought you would pick it out, but like the beginning of the story is like really not appropriate.
What does that mean? I don't pick up what he would pick it out and I wouldn't. What the hell is that?
Yeah, I'm a little more perceptive to human beings than Tom is. He's
I'm really sure that you have a wealth of diverse experience in fucking Rochester. Yeah, I'm sure.
Holy shit. No,
hey, you wanted me to come in hot on this one.
You did. Well played. Bringing it. Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I mean, it's not interesting. It's like very stereotypical 1926 Russian people talking about Japan. So that's weird. But the rest of it, it really is the story that's contained in the book represents the story itself. So just to summarize this part, so the Boris Pilnyak story, a story about how stories come to be written, is about Boris Pilnyak going and meeting the writer Tagaki in Tokyo, where he learns about this woman who goes from Russia to Tokyo, when she's in Russia, she meets this Japanese soldier, she marries him, they move back to Japan because the Japanese soldier isn't allowed to be married at that time to Russians, and because of like what had gone on, he's put on like a 2-year like leave. So they live together in Osaka, I believe, and in his house. And then at the end of the 2-year period or whatever, all these people start like paying attention to them. And it turns out that during that time he had been writing a novel, and the novel is basically like recounting every bit of her life, but she doesn't know it because she can't read Japanese until like sometime later. All these like not paparazzi, but like literary critics or like paparazzi, I guess, like journalists are talking to them, and one of them speaks Russian and explains that the novel is basically just him watching her for 2 years and documenting her life. And so she's like, I don't like this, I'm going home. And so she's leaving. And so there's like a frame story of Pilnyak as the writer hearing about this story of a writer writing about this story of this woman that goes to Japan and has this experience. And it really relates to like how the especially the female character is sort of like pinned down and described within that framework as she is, and like being watched in that way, and how that story came to be, which is the basis of the Pilnyak thing. And that's what Dubravka is playing with in this first section. So, I mean, we can get into the first section in detail, but I mean, just as a general thing, what did you guys think of this? I know, Tom, you've read Dubravka before, I believe.
Yes, I've read some of the essays. I read Ministry of Pain on my honeymoon, actually, which was a really
is appropriate now.
It was a really interesting. It was a really interesting choice. I have.
I read Clive Barker on my honeymoon.
Yeah, no, I've read her before. She's great, but that's dark. I was actually trying to find this section because Dubravka does actually go into this a bit in terms of how Pilnyak describes the author and describes like the interaction. Like there's a bit in there where like he frames him, or at least the wife's reaction to him as him being monstrous, like initially, and then she like warms up to him, like comes to fall in love or something along those lines. But it's like that definitely. I mean, whether Brian would have picked up on it or not, Dubravka did and built it into the first section here. So, there's that.
Well, I was really interested, like the way you were describing that just now, Chad. It rings perfect with the epitaph at the beginning, where it says, "The real literary fun begins the moment a story slips an author's control, when it starts behaving like a rotating lawn sprinkler, firing off every which way. When grass begins to sprout not because of any moisture, but out of thirst for a near source of moisture." And I noticed it was from something called, I've never read it, The Magnificent Art of Translating. Have you read anything about that? Or
no, I meant to look this up too, because there's a moment where I was like, is this even a real book?
Okay. But
I actually want to mention that as well, because I mean that is touched upon within this first section of the idea of like who's real, who's not. Suggestion that Tagaki is actually Tanizaki, and this is really just sort of like an alteration of what was translated as Naomi into the English. But at the same time, I mean, as I don't know Soviet literature very well, so I'm sort of taking as like gospel that Pilnyak is real from the outset. You know, like, I mean, like she, in as much as she's like diving into it, like whether or not these characters are real or not that she's presenting, it's sort of, as a reader, it's sort of built in that she's being honest about this Soviet writer and his life and his various wives and how he died and so on. It was just fun. It was just that brief realization in the middle was like, ah, shit, I'm getting played again.
I know there was. I think that there was a review. It might have been the Kirkus review. It might have been one of those that did reference the idea that like they started reading this and were like, I don't think this Russian writer is a real person. And then like Googled it and was like, oh no, they really are. I just didn't know who they were. And so Pilnyak is real. I don't know much about him. He's like one of the Russian writers that's like slipped beyond my purview. Because I don't know how many people are talking about him or reading him nowadays. But I'm going to tell you this. I've just done like 8 different Google searches under a variety of things. And I Ferris, The Magnificent Art of Translating Life into a Story and Vice Versa, is not showing up on any of them. It's not in WorldCat either. I might not exist.
Okay.
Which is way cool.
No, but I just found it really intriguing, especially when talking with translators and I started to read more translated literature. It's like, whose book is it when something gets translated?
There's that for sure.
Right, because it's obviously still the author's, but it's not anymore because it's slipped out of their, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, like, Farzan says that about Will constantly.
Yeah.
Right? That, you know, the inventive part, bottom of the sky, but especially the inventive part is Will's book. That like he took what Rodrigo did, and I mean, this has been leveled at Mo Yan a bit, right? That who's the translator for Yan? Is that
Howard Goldblatt?
Howard. Yeah, there have been suggestions, or at least there have been some criticism around the time of the like Lauded that Goldblatt actually improved the. I mean, like it was just.
So you want to hear
sort of like it was sort of like some inside baseball stuff that actually made it out of just sort of like conversation, you know, at a bar or whatever.
So this is not related directly to this book, but ties into the theme. So the most recent book that Open Letters Publishing comes out in July. It's called Ma Bole's Second Life by Xiao Heng. And that book she was a Chinese writer at the early 20th century, and she died at the age of 32 and wrote like a number of books, and it was fairly popular. It's even like a documentary about her life. And this book that we're doing, she didn't finish. She wrote like 2/3 about it, or 2/3, maybe 3/4 of like what she had planned out before she passed away. And Howard Goldblatt had translated her other books and took over this book and wrote the end of it and created a frame story for that. So there's like a frame story that's clearly his, and then there's sections within the book that are his as well. So he did the translation plus writing intentionally and wrote it. The afterwards includes this. So it's not like I'm giving away some like grand like secret. It's very explicit in there that that's what he did as her like editor and translator for whatever number of years that he'd been working on her books. I don't know about the Mo Yan thing. I think is a little more complicated. I've heard him allude to it a few times. Like I do know him, but I've never really talked about that. So I don't want to say anything that's right or wrong.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just stuff that showed up.
Yeah, and it's cool. It's like that. I think it's an interesting moment where like a translator can impose themselves in that way. Which in this, I mean, it's related definitely to this first section in the sense that like you have an experience or something in life and then like convert it and impose your will on that. And that's the part that rereading this I thought was the most interesting was related to what you said, Tom, where she says, you know, how do you even know these people are real? Like you're assuming that Pilnyak's like, yeah, this writer existed, this Japanese writer existed, he married this Russian woman, wrote the story, this is all real. I'm
still here.
All right. I'm just making sure you're still there.
Yeah. No, and I think for me personally, I was worried less. I felt the same way, like, oh man, there's no way I know if any of these people are real or not. I'm not well read enough in world literature. And I I just kind of, the same way I do with Frizan, or definitely with reading Physics of Sorrow, I worried less about fact-checking everything and looking at all the references, and it was just kind of just
there we go. Okay.
the gamesmanship and the fun of it. Yeah.
If it's hewing more towards reportage, then we get into a little bit more of a squishy area, I think.
Sure.
But I mean, that even shows up with the whole Joseph Mitchell and Joe Gould thing, right? Like, as more research has been done, it seems very likely that Joseph Mitchell completely, and for folks who don't know, Joseph Mitchell was a legendary writer for The New Yorker, wrote these massive literary nonfiction pieces that over the last, 10 years, 15 years, it's kind of come out that's likely that a lot of his most important pieces were highly fictionalized, that he just created out of whole cloth entire scenes, right?
Yeah.
And that's the big thing of Joe Gould. Jill Lepore had a book called Joe Gould's Teeth that came out 2 years ago that like dives directly into that. That was interesting. But yeah. Yeah.
I wonder do you think part of that might also be why, I mean, I know we're going sideways for a second, but like not that it's a new form, but what do they call it? The non-fictional novel, or what is the hot thing people are doing?
The auto fiction, or
yeah,
no, auto fiction, autographic, like what Canal Scarred is supposed to be.
Yeah, or the Alexander Chee book that just came out, and
okay.
I feel like that one's a little bit different though.
Yeah, but because I don't take this like that at all. I think this is just straight fiction.
Except, I think that's true, but at the same time, there's actually a question I was going to ask Chad, like the layout of the book. I'm just kind of curious about, like and this is a question I ask you like almost every time. And in the Frizan one, there was that paragraph break where you're like, I'm not sure there's supposed to be a paragraph break here. For this one, it's these paragraphs, and every one of them is sort of its own thing broken up. And there are sections within this first part. I'm just wondering why that layout, why that. Is there a reason behind that beyond what was delivered to you as a manuscript, or was there a conversation about that? Because in some of the paragraphs, they feel very self-reflexive, where it seems like she'd already written this piece and then was circling back around and doing it again. They almost feel like individual moments that were cobbled together, almost collage style, and it's a perfectly cohesive whole. But I was just curious from a structural standpoint, literal physical structure standpoint.
First of all, you guys can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever I was talking about before, I'll come back to later. Don't know what happened there. I think it was Fortnite. I think Fortnite crashed my computer's Wi-Fi. The breaks like that, she does that on most of her books. As okay. I feel like it's sort of an Eastern European technique of like having things that stand alone and then having the break, the line, and then having sections that set apart different thoughts or different sort of chapters within the part. Because in future sections, it's not like that. It is intentional, but I don't think it's. I mean, some of them are the same, some of them are not. Like different times she does use paragraphs that indent in the normal way, and then we'll have breaks, but the breaks sort of separate each one of those little kind of thoughts. So it does have the effect that you're talking about of sort of circling back, but it is intentional, but I don't know what that tradition, I don't want to speak to that tradition without having more information. It's just something I've seen from her and from a few other people a lot, and I've just grown accustomed to it, where it's kind of like a nice way to set things apart where you don't feel like there's something nice about that, like airy in a way.
Oh yeah, it gives the individual. I mean, it's almost like individual thoughts, like they're sort of their fullness within that particular moment, given a space, and then you move on to the next one, and they all interconnect over time, especially within the individual parts as she divides it up. But they do have. I think. Airiness, I think is what you just said. I think that's kind of like a nice combination of both, like they have their weight as a thought unto itself, but at the same time, they're not bogged down by being like hard connections to every other section around it. So,
or like, it gives a good space to like something that's more essayistic or something that has more of that sort of tone. It doesn't feel like you're like right on top like a academic essay, but there's a little bit of like, here's a thought and here's the next thought and here's how these thoughts are, but they don't feel like they're on top of each other. The thing that I was saying before the computer stopped having the internet and signed me out of everything was that the part where she talks about whether or not these characters are real or like the belief in them, they seem like real characters, and then implying that that's kind of part of because it uses the fairy tale tropes or the ways of fiction, and that there's a sort of system to how we think of things and think of stories existing, and that using this real life information and fitting it into a pre-existing mold of like, here's the fairy tale, this person comes and drags the character, the female character, into this other world, and these things can happen there, that structure is what causes us to believe in things. And I was, for a long time, I've been fascinated with like people's belief systems or like believing, like why you believe stuff. And it's partially because of the Philip K. Dick book Valis, where it's a lot of it's based on like, he has certain knowledge, the character does, and Philip K. Dick did, sudden immense amounts of knowledge that you would normally not otherwise, he would not have, he did not have. And then suddenly he has this, and he believes it's because God gave him this information, but he's also been schizophrenic and a drug addict, and how can you believe in yourself? And like, how do you believe in what you know? And I've always been sort of fascinated by that. And I got into a long, we'll call it a discussion once with someone who is a huge This American Life fan, where they're talking about how amazing it was that like, you know, genetics are much more important than environmental qualities on raising children, because they had heard this American Life story in which these two children were switched at birth, and like they told the story about how like all this came together, and it's like, why do you believe This American Life? Like it reads like the story you're telling me reads like a fiction story that an MFA student from Iowa would write, and like, why do we believe certain things? It's like, because it sounds true. And I was like, but that doesn't mean anything, but it does. Like if it sounds true and it fits like certain molds, it seems much more believable. And I think that part stood out to me this time reading it, of that little like trigger of like, there's these structures that we're just like, oh yeah, it must be a real character. That's probably accurate and not like just fiction.
Well, how many times did she describe the fox and like what the fox represents, right?
I want to leave that for that. Or there's a question I asked you guys at the end related to that, but yeah, that comes up a number of times too. And it shows up it's like one of the first lines in his story.
Like you can't trust it.
And then she does like she does a deep dive fairly early on, like 3 pages in, about what the various names for the fox within world mythological traditions, and what like gender association, what it means, like all that, and how it moves along. Yeah, page 11, the first full paragraph there, about the trickster, shyster, yet also appears as a demon, a witch, an evil bride, you know, and just goes on, and then kind of occasionally like dovetails back to that, like glancingly, and then moves on, which is just fun, actually.
Yeah, and that's like when I kept seeing that echo, I realized, all right, so is she tricking with me with all this kind of stuff? Because I'm buying into it, but it's like, wait, I keep seeing this echo of the fox, and the fox is sly, and the fox can't, like, it's fun. It's a lot of fun, and it even starts with literature starts becoming fun. Like, it's kind of hidden in there, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's actually the thing that you could love. You could almost try and diagram out this section, especially as she continually ends, like, you know, the different parts with, you know, this, however, is not a story about Zamyatin, but one about how stories come to be written. And then the next section ends with, this, however, is not a story about my mother and father, but a story that wishes to say something come to be written. And then she keeps that mode of how she's almost removing the story over and over and over, and then sliding back into it. Like, oh, this is a story about a story about a story, but it's about this story. And somehow, eventually, it's still telling that story at the same time. I mean, it's very, very clever in that respect. But also, I'd be curious almost to see like how you would flowchart that out. Like what remove of story are you functioning at any given time in the individual sections in this first part?
Yeah, that is very true. It'd be very cool to see. I liked all those little sections at the end, especially the one that I had marked the most was, I just had it a second ago, but the one that I starred was the one about, this, however, is not a story about the past and the present, but a story about a story that tells of the stories come to be written.
Yeah.
which is fun. But yeah, the part that I was thinking of the fox being right away, it's on the second page of Fox, but in the second page of the Pilnyak story of the fox is the god of cunning and treachery. If the spirit of the fox enters a man, then that man's race is accursed.
Right. And that and Pilnyak visited a shrine that was devoted to the fox. And that's the lead in to everything else that follows in the story, right? Or at least that's how she presents it, unless I'm misremembering how that went.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's absolutely true.
And he ends up getting killed.
And then she talks about going. She talks about going to Kyoto as well, which is like, I mean, it's one of those things where it creates that idea of like there are real life becomes stories, but like what parts are believed and not believed in that setup. So the reason I was going to mention the fox thing at the end, but we can talk about it now, is that when I taught this book in my class, like one of the students or a couple of students were like, well, there's not enough of an explanation of the fox myth in society or how it relates to.
It's like 9 times in here in the first part.
but I think what they wanted was it to be more like pedantically explained, like this is what it means and this is how I'm going to represent that. And I was like, it's way more interesting to me that it's referenced and those pieces sit there and then you can infer what you want to infer. Like what sections of this are like, if that's part of the game of like the sort of real and not real and like taking something and making it into something else, taking the Tanizaki novel and making it into the story of this woman from Russia going to Japan. And like, that's a story from this Russian author that she's then writing about this Russian author and making other stories about that. Like that's sort of like the what's real and what's not and how that gets blurred is kind of the cunningness of the fox and the fun of like the writer as fox and playing that game it shouldn't be more pedantic than that. But I guess I was going to bring it up then as a question to you guys is to like, are all those descriptions like, hey, like you say, the 9 different times, but are those enough to kind of frame and to reference the fox-like nature of this book?
We'll take page 27 in the middle of it. It says, the motto of the present would go something like this: the fox is the totem of cunning and treachery. If the spirit of the fox enters a person, then that person's tribe is blessed! ! Well, that's exactly the opposite of what we just heard a second ago. Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, this is confusing. Right? It's like the way it just keeps thing and a thing and a thing and a thing of a thing of a thing. So,
although isn't that section the sort of like what the fox used to be versus like today's
what it is now,
uber democratic nature?
Yeah, what it's become. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's
that
Japanese
you can't.
Disney. Yeah, it's not spiritual. It's Japanese Disneyland now, and now like the fox is good. Like, yeah.
The motto of the present would sometimes be like this.
Well, she's also doing something interesting though in terms of like the fox as like, you know, rewriting or like cunning as being spinning its story, but she's all like, or how it passes along. But she does a lot of interesting stuff like throughout when she references the on page 23, the paper she came across from her time in Moscow. Where she just has all these trigger words written out that mean absolutely nothing to her now, but they were designed at the time to like be lead-ins for further research or stories or what have you. And she even mentions the idea of like a removable disc. Like I think in some ways she's also playing with the idea of how information passes along, how it's reproduced, how we continue to use it. But then she also plays off the idea that like that disc is unreadable now. These files are unreadable now. Like she doesn't even carry books with her anymore because she's always traveling. So like what she has is memory, and what she has is how like this story she can tell in that moment in some ways. I mean, like I think she's playing a really interesting game here with how she's manipulating the myth of the fox, but also bringing in the Pilnyak's story. Like I think there's a lot. It's funny. Her prose style is such that like it just glides across the page. Like,
it's super simple on the surface. I agree. Like I'm just reading right along. I'm like, wait, this is really hard.
And you all of a sudden you're 45 pages in. You're like, oh, that was a cool section. And then 30 minutes later, you're like, wait, what did she just do? What just happened there? And like there are layers here that are. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, it is that. I say it's deceptively, not deep is the wrong word, but it's deceptive in terms of how much is happening, and not in the, like, it's purely because every way that she tells this story is designed to keep you moving and it's designed
it's fair to say it's like sly and cunning, and just stalks right along.
It's a fable in many respects, and in as much as it can be a fable with this much like jumping around through the 20th century and this much detail, and using these great numbers of actual people, it still functions as a fable, and it's really interesting in that regard, I think.
She's very interested in like fairy tales and fables and that sort of thing.
Well, her Baba Yaga book.
Yes, exactly. The Baba Yaga book is fantastic and does deal with that a lot. But it does show up Life as a Fairy Tale is one of her stories, which predates that as well. So yeah, it's always been there. I'm trying to find actually one of the other things that I always wanted to sort of dive into, which I'm not sure if it's translated in English, is that on page 44, one of the things, like if part of this is the game playing and like things switching around or whatever, there's the Yuriko Miyamoto section where it talks about how in the book Milepost, as a fictionalized autobiography, talks about going to Moscow, and they have a gathering at a Russian writer's place called Pilnyak. And then there is some confirmation that she had a party with Boris Pilnyak, and it has the quasi attempted rape scene in there. And I was very curious about that, reading it, if that's an invention or where that comes from. But there's nothing, I can't find anything about that particular book either.
It's funny, when you had Fortnite issues, we were talking about very briefly about fictionalized autobiographies, how they're really hot right now. And there's one mentioned in the book here from a long time ago, and that part jumped out at me when I read it.
Like, you mean Ben Lerner? Every Ben Lerner book?
Yeah.
I mean, he's awesome. The World Cat doesn't have this either, but I don't know that this book would have ever been translated into English. Milepost, but I think it's interesting.
Well, and that's actually
like another one of these twists, like the twist of like.
That's...
Go you.
No, you finish your thought, and I'll jump in at the end because you keep like jumping over each other.
My thought was that it's another one of these twists of like, if the story is taking someone's story, if Tanizaki takes this one story of this girl, transforms it into Naomi, Pilnyak takes that story of that girl and transforms it into his story, and that story it's sort of like, I guess, parallel to that, the story of like what happens with how he redefines the woman and how he like makes her within that story is related to this other story written by someone else who's taking that story of an event that happened with him and transforming it into a story in her autobiography. All those little transformations of how stories get made are taking that raw material and sort of fitting it into a sort of like pre-described social block. And I think that all the variations on that in this chapter make it both where you slide over it and like look back and are like, this is more complicated and there are a lot of like layers to this. And makes it hard to see like the overall layer of what she's doing with like playing with that game and being that kind of Fox-like narrator as well. That's all I was going to say. You go, Tom.
I mean, after that, those are all really good points, which makes me feel like where am I to say? You brought up World Cat again, and one of the things that this is actually one of the reasons why I got as a young bookseller, I got into translation as fast and as hard as I did, was the ability to like actually that much differently and simply not knowing who Boris Pilnyak is. Is it necessary? No, but at the same time, like it's not even something that like it's not even a footnote in anything I've ever read. Like he's not. Like when you guys published Season of Ash, the Jorge Volpe, I mean, like that sort of dive into the Soviet space was fascinating to me. And this is one of the things that makes Dubravka so fascinating is how many different traditions she's pulling from and all the different ways that she's, making really compelling literature that crosses, God knows how many boundaries in terms of like what she's pulling in, what she's referencing, what her concerns are at any given moment. And that was all I was gonna say. Nothing terribly deep. Just, I like translate literature is all I was going for.
Let me ask you guys a question too that came out of my class. Since they have most of the questions in the class related to this section. Probably, I don't know how much of they said they all read the book, but who knows?
Probably the only thing they read. Yeah, it's the only thing I would have read in undergrad. It's like the first 40 pages and the last 40 pages.
Call it good.
Yeah.
I mean, these poor kids are assigned a book a week, and they're just like,
you got no chance, man. Yeah.
One book a week.
No
one book a week, and they can't keep up with that.
They have other things going on, man. There's like keg stands and shit.
You
Tinder.
stole my line.
Imagine having Tinder when you were in college. You think you'd?
Let's be clear. Fortnite killed Tinder. If Tinder goes away right now, it's purely because their target demo is just playing Fortnite at all times.
All day. If the second that Aiden is out of school, it will be Fortnite 24/7.
No, man. I'd be
Wait
taking
until it doesn't even exist on
and swiping right. That's all I do in college. if that was around in my time.
Android yet. Like there is only iPhone. So imagine when they get the rest of the world. I mean, servers everywhere are going to die. Like
talking about
servers
Fortnite?
are going to actually send messages to like whoever's running them saying like we're done. Fortnite doesn't exist on Android.
No, but it exists on the PS4 and on all those other and on the computer. Like you can play it on all sorts of things. It's unbelievable. Anyway, I don't want to talk about Fortnite at all.
Your students. What did your students ask? Yes.
I
looked for it in the Google Play Store. I couldn't find it.
Okay, so that's possible. But it's on if you just go to computer Fortnite or whatever, you're spelling night wrong, right?
Chad, we're all done.
Why
are you still on Fortnite? Stop already. God.
Forget Fortnite.
Jeez.
They wanted it. They weren't sure if the narrator in the section was a male or female.
I'm just confused about Fortnite real quick. One last thing.
I don't understand why it's popular exactly.
I don't even know what it is, to be honest with you.
it's no, I'm not going to fall into your trap.
I tried to fox you into talking about it more.
Yeah, damn it. I was going to say that, cutting like a son of a.
Well played. They weren't sure if it was a male or female narrator.
On Fortnite?
Until you do get sent in as a male or female. It's arbitrary on Fortnite. But until the section where there's the interaction with the guy in the bar. Where is this? It's towards the end. That then the narrator meets up with later. They thought that it was a male writing this.
That's like the default setting.
The former lover that she runs into.
Yeah, the former lover. But there's the description of like meeting in the God, where is it? Now I can't find anything. I did read this last night, I'm pretty sure. I met him. It's on page 24. It's not as late as I thought it was. I met him in a bar at Moscow's Hotel Belgrade, well-known meeting place for the city's Yugoslav population, blah, blah, blah. Until that point, they thought that it was a male narrator, and they were confused. And I was just curious if you guys thought that too, or had any other.
Well, why wasn't it still a male narrator?
What's that?
Why wasn't it still a male narrator?
Oh well, they did bring that up too, and that's why I said like the narrator themselves. I don't see it as a male narrator, but they were like that. They thought that, and I was curious to them as to why, and I was curious if you guys had any sort of reaction like that. Like, I think the bias naturally would be like, it's written by a woman. You're going to assume like a narrator that's non-defined will be a woman, but there's not a lot of textual clues. But what it came up in the class was that it was more or less because it was like about an author they didn't know about, that's obscure, that's Russian, and that has that academic tone, should be male. Which is a weird, interesting sort of thing.
At all.
Yeah. Me neither. This is what teaching does to you, man.
I guess.
You hear these crazy opinions, and you're like, whoa.
Whoa, yeah. That's news to me.
Like, I suppose. But that was their other big thing.
Well, I don't think if it's male or female really matters either way to me personally, but I don't know.
I don't either.
I just kind of always took it as being like a very thinly veiled like narrator for Dubravka's voice to make it more, to fall into that weird, what space am I in? It makes it, like, that's what I took it as.
The thing I think does hold truth through this that they sort of led to but didn't necessarily name with this is that I think the different sections they seem to be the same narrator probably, but they seem to also take places at different points in the narrator's life, and that the time would jump. So that's why I also sort of brought this up. Like I didn't agree with them. I don't know that it matters, but it was like interesting to think about readers, having that sort of reaction. But I do think that as you read the further sections, the time on where this is in this narrator's life can be much different. It's not like it's, 20, 21, 24, 26. Like I think it can be a different perspective. And at this point in time, it's very much like the student going to Moscow, but reflecting on that from a later point in time. I believe it might even date that, getting back towards that student reading and doing the research on Pilnyak and doing that kind of investment, and that sort of student energy of looking at and treating stories in this way, I think rides this chapter a lot, drives it.
Well, I think they just took a very hedgehog approach to a clearly Fox-like narrative. So, I mean, what are you going to do with that?
I mean, does not. Katie from Riverhead, Katie Freeman's Twitter handle is Foxy Hedgehog, which is that combination. Like, probably
Foxy
played
Hedgehog.
out the best that it could be. Yeah.
Yeah.
She sort of wins on the combining of those two terms.
I just find it really interesting. I mean, there's no point that the voice in here seems to me to be like jumping in time. Like it's a consistent recounting.
Not here.
Like
in part 2, in part 3, in part 4, in part 5, in the future parts.
Okay. Well, you said I didn't have to read any more than my section, so
no. Yeah, just for tonight. That makes sense. This is that's what I mean. I'm just framing this for future episodes. That might be something that become.
Well,
back
that
to.
suggests, Chad, that your students read further than part 1, because
Chad.
Chad,
dial it back, dude. Tom and I are just following the rules you set for us. I mean, I didn't realize you were going to pull this on us.
I mean, Brian was even so good as not to read the story, even though he could.
I know. I even held back. I held back.
I mean, I appreciate that.
Thanks, Tom.
I'm gonna send you a bottle of wine next. That's how that goes.
I'll drink it.
Next podcast.
I'll drink it slowly and I'll appreciate it. I'll smell it before I drink it.
Instead of just drinking it like I did, just like straight.
Yeah, that's actually what I love. Is like Chad's like, oh, it's already drunk. I'm like, what the hell do you mean it's already drunk? Like, you just got it today. Brian literally just texted me. He dropped it off. I just sent him the money for the drop off, and somehow you've already consumed the entire bottle of champagne.
When he walked in with it open, it was already. Partially drunk.
Oh,
now we get to the truth, don't we?
No, man.
When you read the part about foxes and hedgehogs, what did you identify with more? I'm curious. Chad, I assume
we should set that up. We should set that up first because, hey, this is trying to sell people on the book. We should set up what the difference between a fox and a hedgehog is.
Yes. Okay.
Brian, our host.
Oh, I'm the host.
You're the host.
Hedgehogs have very rigid, narrow views, and foxes are more kind of fluid and open to many ideas and many thoughts and many opinions, like kind of open to the world. I forget. I'm trying to find the footnote where it has all the literary people.
It's the Isaac Berlin thing. Okay, here we go.
Page
the fox
31.
knows many things. Yes, 31. The fox knows many things, and the hedgehog but one. Put baldly, authoritarian and totalitarian ideas are grounded in monism, and tolerance and liberalism is pluralism. In accordance with these categories, Berlin divided eminent writers into hedgehogs and foxes, into those who write, engage, and think with recourse to a single idea, hedgehogs, and those who merge manifold heterogeneous experiences and ideas, foxes. Dante, Plato, Pascal, Dostoevsky, Nietzsche, and Proust are hedgehogs, and Montague, is that spelled right? Montague, Erasmus,
Montague. Whatever, freshman English. Capulets are hedgehogs, and Montagues are foxes, and that's why they're always fighting.
Oh, man,
and Joyce are foxes. Wait, you skipped a bunch. Erasmus, Molière,
back and forth.
Goethe, Pushkin, and Joyce are foxes.
That's funny that they have Goethe in there because I just told the German literary agent, like, one of the most embarrassing times of my life was when like, oh, I read this wonderful poem by Goethe. Have you read Goethe? And the German person is like, who?
In Chicago,
Chicago, that's
there's
what they
Goethe
call it.
Street. There's Goethe's, like on the north side. But no, they don't call it Goethe. They call it Goethe. So
Yeah.
my mom and like my entire family, like my mom though, when she first moved to Chicago, almost missed her stop because she always got off at Goethe. Like she knew it was Goethe, but everyone pronounced Goethe when the bus driver announced Goethe Street, and then like, oh shit, and like starts to like run for it because she realizes that like, oh, this guy actually knows how to pronounce Goethe.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
The change of pace. I'm actually like Joyce as a fox is interesting to me.
Why would Joyce not be a fox?
Processing still.
I think because, well, I mean, Ulysses is like a multitude of experiences and viewpoints, which I think is the fox aspect. Whereas like Proust, Dostoevsky, Nietzsche, those are all singular visions of a singular character frequently. Like even I mean, Proust goes off on things, but it all comes back to him and comes back to that memory and comes back to that thing. And like Notes from Underground, like that's one burning ass voice.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty cool with everyone who's laid out as a hedgehog. It's just like for some reason, and I can't quite explain why. For some reason, Joyce as a fox like just seems awkward to me, and I'm probably wrong here, but I don't know. I don't have a good reason for it. It's just sort of like,
hey,
I read that and was like,
the dude drank in Croatia. He's got a statue in Croatia.
Oh, I want a picture of that statue, by the way, to confirm that it is actually Joyce and not just some dude that showed up and like sold himself. Like some like Mick shows up and sells himself as Joyce.
So the thing
that would be
just
amazing.
Referred to him as a Mick.
Here's the thing that makes that town famous.
Apparently. I get to do that, Chad.
Okay, fair enough.
It has a Roman arch that's like 2,000 years old, and it's perfectly intact, and it's one of the only like few in
I've got
Europe
a picture of it.
that's still intact. And as you go through the arch on the right-hand side, there's a bar, and that's where the Joyce statue is. But like people go to that little town because of that arch for whatever reason.
All right then.
What I'm thinking about,
the place is Pula, Pula.
Yeah.
Porterata Square, something like that.
It was a very important military port for a long while. It's about 6 hours south of Vienna by car. That's what I know about it. But that's it. But like when I was looking at this section,
that's all you know about it. You know about like how far it is from Vienna. You know that like there's a Joyce statue outside.
How old it is.
Really weird.
I mean, like frankly, I'm not entirely sure this place like exists other than like in an intricate like internet game Brian's been playing like a long time. Yeah. Just for when it was most opportune to lay this one out.
What kind of shit can I make up? You're like, that's amazing. Yeah, it's all.
We also skipped over the best part of the hedgehog section though. As like what was used as the lead in the footnote.
Yeah, but when I was reading that, my gut reaction was that like, well, I want to be a fox because I think hedgehogs are bad. But looking at it, like, there's really not wrong or right if you want to be a hedgehog or a fox. I mean, there's totally fine. But
yeah,
I just have this gut reaction of like, well, I don't want to just be focused on one idea and be really good at it. I want to suck at everything.
You don't want to be totalitarian.
Yeah.
You want to be filled with tolerance.
Tom, hit us with that lead-in you're talking about, please.
So this is coming at the tail end of section 10, which lays out how Pilnyak is arrested and eventually executed. And basically someone shows up dressed all in white and says that I believe Nikolai Ivanovich requests you to come urgently, which, means nothing to me until they explain that Nikolai Ivanovich are the given names for Nikolai Ivanovich I'm terrible at my Slavic pronunciation. Is that Yezhov?
That's
how you do it?
That works for me.
Yezhov, who was the head of the NKVD and was leading the purges of the writers. And she uses that as a footnote because it's referenced that the hedgehog, the terrible, that in Slavic, so the footnote goes, translator's note, in Slavic languages, the word, and then lays it out, all the different variations of it, means hedgehog, which explains how the terrifying Yezhov becomes hedgehog the terrible. And then it turns into a whole thing about the hedgehog versus the hedgehog and the fox, and Isaiah Berlin, and who is a hedgehog, who is a fox, and which is then brought in later on with regards, oddly, I don't know, is it odd, with the accusation of rape or attempted rape at the end. Page 44, talking about Yuriko Miyamoto and how this all got folded in. That second full paragraph, or perhaps there is an internal polemic at work, the irreconcilability of the two types of writers sketched by Isaiah Berlin in his essay, The Hedgehog and the Fox. Apart from being a woman, Miyamoto was obviously also a hedgehog. Which is all like with regards to like taking revenge on the attempted rape in novels, and just it just feels a little weird, that one moment, but I don't know.
Sure.
I might be completely like misreading and
No, I know what you mean. I think does that relate mostly to like the sort of inherent thing that Brian was talking about, not wanting to be a hedgehog, or seeing hedgehog as bad?
Well, I think this book sets it up
Yeah,
as bad.
I mean, possibly.
Like the guy killing everybody because of an ideal is a hedgehog, right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's a pretty, it's at least in this section, it seems like there's a pretty clear moral statement there with regards to, at least within representation of ideas between hedgehogs and foxes, which then skews interestingly towards like an assessment of the literary output of the one's reference.
Although, just to complicate this and to try and like, just to intentionally try and complicate it, there is a difference though between like a persona and a writerly approach. And like you were saying, Brian, like both writerly approaches are, these people that are falling into the categories are like great on both sides, just different types of things, which might be slightly different than like a human being in real life and their actions towards other people.
Yes, of course.
But you know what's okay? So that Pula thing, going back to the Joyce thing for 2 seconds. So he taught English as a second language there, and you just I just have to read this to you.
Joyce did?
Yeah. So you have to. So he, he wasn't getting paid much.
Theory.
So he wasn't getting paid much. He didn't really have much time to work on his own art. And this was when he put himself in exile during the portrait times, right? So listen to this paragraph.
That's
Joyce's solution to this
was in Pula, actually. Yeah.
Right. So Joyce's solution to this was to talk about his own writing to his students, as well as other subjects he was interested in, politics or the cinema or music. Sometimes he even ended his lessons by singing Irish songs in his fine tenor. Since conversation is a large part of learning a language, these teaching techniques were justified, but perhaps Joyce's constant tardiness to the lessons or his habits of arriving inebriated and staring morosely out the window revealed the resentment he had towards teaching and its effects on what he considered his real work, writing. In spite of this uneven classroom behavior, Joyce was always able to keep his clients.
I just picture a drunk guy staring out the window. Class has begun.
Let's talk about things I like. Politics. Parnell.
Yeah, that's exactly what I talk about.
So wait, Tom, you didn't believe I had dinner with Croatian people leading up to that?
No, I actually 100% believe that part.
That didn't seem believable to you?
No, that seemed believable. Whether or not they were snowing you.
Yeah.
So, do you have a favorite part from this section? Favorite line?
Oh, shit. You ask this every time, and I'm never prepared.
Why are you never prepared? You've done this I don't know how many times, man. Come on.
Yeah, I've actually been on every version of this thing, and I'm still not just,
I've got one.
Go ahead. Go for it.
Okay. I am haunted by the feeling that I live in a time in which enchantment has been forever banished, although I can't explain what that magic is, nor the purpose it serves, nor why the past was better than the present.
Ooh. I got this one on
page 20. It's not even
20.
a depressing death one.
Yeah. I got this one on page 27 because I was thinking about book trailers and how wonderful those are. Today, Sophia would be scurrying to write her account of her erotic life with Tagaki, her novel lavishly buffeted by promotional video material. Putting one's life and lives of others on display is at this moment no longer a question of ethics and choice, but one of automatism. And it goes on.
I think buffeted is really like the most operative word there.
Yeah.
Lavishly buffeted by promotional videos is wonderful. That's so perfect.
I just love that. Yep, that's our times. That
Yep.
works.
Well, all right. So I'll kick in with like a short paragraph since I totally screwed the pooch in this one. World literature is like a whale around which suckerfish gather like practice pirates. This is
Yes.
page 43. They attach themselves to the whale's body and vacuum the parasites from its skin. The whale is a source of food, protection, and means of transport. Without the suckerfish, parasites would settle on the whale's body and the body fall apart. I have no illusions about my own literary talent. I am a literary suckerfish. My mission is to attend to the whale's health.
So you chose a quote that's a quote.
Yep, sure did.
Well done. It's like a whale inside a whale.
Inside the whale, my friend. Inside the
And
whale.
more whales inside those whales. With
And
suckerfishes.
Whales all the way down.
That's also
works-
a
that
reference
works.
no one's gonna get.
That works actually perfect with what this book's about. Because I mean, like on page 26, this, however, is not the story about me and my time in Moscow, but a story that is telling, or that's trying to tell a story. And that story is trying to tell a story about how stories come to be written. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
Don't you see what he was
That's
doing?
it.
He was setting you up, trying to. His quote of the quote was just trying to connect the themes of the foxiness, but you got tricked by the trickster. So stop being a hedgehog and like open your mind a little bit, Chad. Jeez.
So-
I just like whales inside of whales. What am I supposed to do? There's a giant mosaic of a whale inside a whale here in Rochester.
Yeah.
Let everyone in on that joke.
It's across the. I can see it right here from out my window.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah,
I pass it every time I go to Brian's house. A whale inside a whale.
yeah.
I just want to comment that since we started, like this is the second time we've done like the whole video thing, that Brian's got the perfect setup with like
I
the
know.
black wall behind, and like as soon as the video comes up, I'm like, ah, shit, I'm wearing stripes. This is not good. This is like for everyone listening to the
Dude.
podcast. I gotta tell you, I am a nightmare to look at right now. I am like, it's like nothing but glaring and darting across your screen for no obvious reason. It's just.
What does that say, Brian?
Over here.
I'm just gonna put secret post-it notes each week behind on my black wall, and I don't know if they come into frame or not while I'm talking, but this is this week's.
That's actually how you should. Chat, that's actually how you should start selling the discount code. Is that it's specific to the week and it's behind you. So if you want it, you better watch the live stream.
Did that one
It's like
come
that
into?
guy on that ESPN show.
Yeah. Did that one come into focus or no?
Yeah,
Not really.
that is the outro music is 100% the secret of my success because I had that I got that song stuck in my head out of nowhere and I was like, why is this happening? And I was like, oh, we're doing the podcast tonight. Like Michael J. Fox is running in the background, but Tom came up with the music for the intro this week.
Oh, pray tell, what was it, Tom?
Well,
You're gonna
I think
hate
you
me
have to
so much
listen.
for this one.
I think everyone should just have to listen. Everyone who's listening to the podcast will know.
All right, sounds good.
Download
The first
it.
30 seconds. And my Twitter handle is @ThomasK Flynn. So let me know what you think about that one, and I'm pretty sure what you think. So,
The thoughts are not going to be positive.
not so much. Not so much.
Nope, probably not. So for next week, we have a section.
Who do you have on next week?
We don't at the moment. So that's to be announced, TBD. But I don't have. I have to reopen everything because everything died when Fortnite ruined everything. But so if you give me 2 seconds, I can find out what we're reading. But it's part of part 2, which is called A Balancing Art. And I think it's the first like 25 pages. So it's not the full section. We're breaking this part up into a couple different areas. I think it's broken up into 2 sections.
Pages.
And I would tune in because I'm going to have a listicle prepared of 5 greatest things about Croatia coming up next week. So, and I'm not going to do them all in a row. I'm just going to slide them into conversation.
I feel I have to point out that you made me read a 80-page paragraph about like green cows and post-mortem sex, and I now read a 45-page intro to like a first section to like get this thing going, and for section 2, it's like kid glove time, just 20 pages. It's easy.
Oh,
It's
no,
whatever.
it's 30. It's 30. It's from page. Okay, so we're going to talk about pages 46 through 75.
Color me unimpressed, my friend.
Whew. Burn.
Well,
it's the first 6 parts of the next section.
Well, tune in for a listicle. I'll have a great listicle set up.
I mean, with all those pages you're not reading, Brian, you have so much time to do listicles.
So much time to prepare.
You could actually do Instagram stories of you reading it or you not reading it. It'd actually be really great. It's to watch you on Instagram not read it for a week straight and then try and cram for an hour before the podcast.
I'm on board with that.
That's what I did today, basically.
This is true.
My point is though we know this is what you did. So why don't you use it as an advertising opportunity for the fucking podcast? That's all
clearly.
I'm put out there. My heart is in promoting the podcast and burning you, but
Yeah, Brian, use your Instagram more, man.
I don't have Instagram. That's the problem.
I'm aware. I tried to tag you earlier today and was very frustrating.
Yeah.
By the way, your Twitter handle has been claimed, your actual Twitter handle has been claimed on Instagram by somebody else. Apparently, he's 19, does a lot of CrossFit. So,
whoa,
that hill.
He's my hero. It's my hero.
Well, screw that.
Have you, Tom, you've seen the other Chad post, right? The unlovable Chad post?
No, I haven't. Should I?
Oh, yeah. Go onto YouTube and just Google Chad post unlovable, and you'll have the time of your life. Just the song, the time of your life, which was a song that won the best song from a soundtrack in the year that the Secret to My Success came out, starring Michael J. Fox.
I'm not. Why do you know that? I mean, I know why you know that, but
because I looked up the Secret to My Success today. I looked up Secret to My Success today to get all the songs down because I was trying to figure out what the name of the song was that was stuck in my head. And when you figure out what song that is, you're gonna be like you're an idiot, Chad, because it's the name of the song is the song itself. But in the Wikipedia, it says that the year that came out in 1987, the theme song performed by Night Ranger to Secret of My Success was a finalist for the song of the year for the Oscars or whatever, but it lost to the I'm Having the Time of My Life from whatchamacallit?
Dirty Dancing.
Yeah, Dirty Dancing.
Nice. So did we just lose Brian?
We lost Brian. Brian's gone, so we'll call it a night.
Do you want me to do the outro? We'll just
do it.
See my pants. Do the outro.
You got to do all the bits. Remember, Twitter discount, like us on iTunes.
Wait, what is the discount? You know what? I don't care what the discount is. I'm actually going to do it on my own. So thank you so much for listening to 2-month review this week. It's been a blast. This is Tom Flynn from Volumes Book Cafe in Chicago. You can follow us at Volumes Books and me personally at Thomas K. Flynn. Been chatting with Chad Post at Chad W. Post, who's the publisher of Open Letter Books at open_letter. Is that it?
You blew it away.
Nice.
Right on.
Then
join us next week.
We were also talking with Brian Wood at Brian Wood _ who has no Instagram presence, much to everyone's dismay, because who doesn't want to watch what was it?
He does have an Instagram presence. It's under his daughter's name, which is
I'm not
Isaac
gonna put
Wood.
that out there. What are you doing? I'm not gonna put that out there.
I don't know how to spell it.
Chad.
They don't know how to
Oh
spell
my
it.
god. So, anyways, this has been Tom. Apparently, there's some sort of discount Open Letter if you go there, but why would you do
buy
that?
the book from Volumes. Everyone go
Or
buy the book
go
from
to
Volumes.
Go to indiebound.org. If you live in the Northeast, buy it from Riff Raff. Go if you live on the West Coast. There are like 5 billion stores I could reference. I don't want to piss off. So, just go to indiebound.org. Find your local indie bookseller. Make friends with them. They probably have this book. If they don't, harangue the hell out of them until they do, because this is how these things change. And yeah, this has been fun. I'm Tom. This is Chad.
Good job. Chad. Well done.
All right.
Great outro. Totally nailed it.
Better than Brian.
Better than me. Thanks, guys.